Hey YouTubers, it's me, Steven. I'm back again for another educational session on JFK. Uh, One thing that most people don't understand, or at least novices in the research community don't understand, is what do they know about JFK's presidency with regards to its assassination. I actually have a bullet points of a few. I actually have a few bullet points of the things that are most commonly known about JFK. Here we go. What most people know is that JFK was only in office for about 3 years. He dealt with Cuba and the Soviet Union. He spearheaded the civil rights legislation, and he made great speeches, but is only remembered mostly for this one.
Only a few generations have been granted the role of defending freedom in its hour of maximum danger. I do not shrink from this responsibility. I welcome it. I do not believe that any of us would exchange places with any other people or any other generation. The energy, the faith, the devotion which we bring to this endeavor will light our country and all who serve it. And the glow from that fire can truly light the world. And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country.
Anyway, that's what he's most famous for, that speech up there. But anyway, he basically goes on to die tragically at the hands of Lee Harvey Oswald, and he was succeeded by Lyndon Baines Johnson, who signed the Civil Rights Act a few months afterwards. But what most people don't really know about JFK was that he openly talked about conspiracies several times throughout his presidency. JFK also distinctly mentioned how he and the American people were opposed to secret societies and a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy.
The very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society, and we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings. We decided long ago that the dangers of excessive and unwarranted concealment of pertinent facts far outweighed the dangers which are cited to justify it. Even today, there is little value in opposing the threat of a closed society by imitating its arbitrary restrictions. Even today, there is little value in ensuring the survival of our nation if our traditions do not survive with it. And there is very grave danger that an announced need for increased security will be seized upon by those anxious to expand its meaning to the very limits of official censorship and concealment. That I do not intend to permit to the extent that it's in my control. And no official of my administration, whether his rank is high or low, civilian or military, should interpret my words here tonight as an excuse to censor the news, to stifle dissent, to cover up our mistakes, or to withhold from the press and the public the facts they deserve to know. For we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence, on infiltration instead of invasion, on subversion instead of elections, on intimidation instead of free choice, on guerrillas by night instead of armies by day. It is a system which has conscripted vast human and material resources into the building of a tightly knit, highly efficient machine that combines military, diplomatic, intelligence, economic, scientific, and political operations. Its preparations are concealed, not published. Its mistakes are buried, not headlined. Its dissenters are silenced, not praised.
Okay, And he also spoke about an international conspiracy during the Cuban Missile Crisis.
Finally, I want to say a few words to the captive people of Cuba, to whom this speech is being directly carried by special radio facilities. I speak to you as a friend, as one who knows of your deep attachment to your fatherland, as one who shares your aspirations for liberty and justice for all. And I have watched, and the American people have watched, with deep sorrow, how your nationalist revolution was betrayed and how your fatherland fell under foreign domination. Now your leaders are no longer Cuban leaders, inspired by Cuban ideals. They are puppets and agents of an international conspiracy.
Quite something, eh? And he also wanted to dissolve the CIA, and he also wanted to dissolve the Federal Reserve. In case you guys don't understand what those two organizations are, they're basically part of our security apparatus, at least the CIA is, and the Federal Reserve is a private bank that is basically that our Constitution forbids. In fact, I'll actually show you in a later video what the Fed actually is and what it does and why JFK was against it. He also was to have allegedly said that there exists a plot to enslave every man, woman, and child. And considering what he was dealing with, it wouldn't be surprised if he didn't see that. And on top of that, why is his assassination still so fascinating after 50 years? I mean, it's been 5 decades, my parents' generation. Why is it still important? Well, I'd say it's still important because more people are talking about it, especially in the Web 2.0 era, where we can now go onto YouTube and various other places and view his assassination exclusively through the internet, and we can pretty much state that the government record, according to what we see and what was written in the reports, simply doesn't add up. And on top of that, basically, there's also the one word that most people don't like to hear, and I think it's been stigmatized. But anyway, none dare call his assassination. That's correct. None dare call it a conspiracy. So, what is it about conspiracies that most people in this particular area don't exactly like? I mean, do conspiracies exist? Of course they do. I mean, basically, our government wouldn't be lying to us now, would they? Would you trust your teachers to actually lie to you about certain things that have gone on in history? Well, let's see. Lies my teacher told me. Basically, I highlighted this book again in one of my previous videos, but it really talks about American history and essentially all the issues that we've actually been taught in our classrooms have actually proven to be pretty darn of a stretch of the truth. It isn't what they say in high school about American history is mostly mythology. I mean, a lot of this stuff really didn't happen. Like, for instance, what was it? Paul Revere saying that the British are coming. The British are coming. Well, he never exactly said that. But Paul Revere would have said the commoners are coming. The commoners are coming, or the redcoats are coming. But it's just a kind of a play on words, since we are about 230 years removed from the Revolutionary War. But remembering that particular time in the nation's history, it's very confusing for most people because a lot of it isn't politically correct for our modern day culture, because essentially, well, it happened 230 years ago, and what was acceptable back then isn't acceptable now. But anyway, getting back to the thing at hand, it's important to actually ask questions about what your teachers are actually teaching you. And it's also important to question what your newscasters are actually telling you. I mean, with this Sandy Hook thing, I'm not exactly sure I actually buy the premise that what took place is exactly what took place according to what the newscasters and what we're being fed to on television. Because essentially what I was saying earlier about the JFK assassination is that, frankly, upon a lot of review, people will assume that, yes, more to it than just one man. So, where does that leave us? How can we get history right? Well, first off, you actually have to take a look at exactly what is really going on in the world, and especially taking a look at sources that you wouldn't otherwise look at, like David Icke's works, for example. He talks about, in this particular encyclopedia, he says, actually on the cover there's a quote from John Lennon saying that our society is run by insane people with insane objectives, and I think we're being run by maniacs with maniacal ends, and I think I'm liable to be put away as insane for expressing that. Yep, that's what insane is all about. And people who believe in conspiracies are actually labeled as insane. They can't possibly be true, but unfortunately, going back to what I was saying earlier about JFK saying that there was a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that opposed him and the American people, and he wasn't just saying that in verbatim. He was actually making a lot of statements that didn't name names, and he was very slick about this, but he did, should I say, he did make a case that essentially there was a lot more going on than what he could actually let on, and there was a lot of things that were really going wrong, especially with in relation to the administration's policy towards Cuba, what the CIA was doing with Cuba at the time, and essentially the kind of clandestine operations that were going on without his approval. And on paper, he is supposed to be the boss, right? Well, not according to what happened in Dallas. So, where does that leave us? Basically, I can't really prove anything that anything is going on. All I have are books by people like Jim Douglas, JFK, why he died and why it matters. He chose peace, and they marked him for death. And the thing is, a lot of what Jim Douglas talks about with this particular treatment on JFK is the fact that he actually emphasized peace throughout his entire administration. And before then, before he came into office, Eisenhower, General Eisenhower, the president before him, and the commander of the armed forces during World War II stated,
"In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex. The potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power exists and will persist. We must never let the weight of this combination endanger our liberties or democratic processes."
Okay, well, there you have it. Basically, what do we make all of this? Well, war essentially makes money. And if you take a look at exactly what we do export nowadays, is basically just military arms. America is the biggest arms dealer in the entire world. And the thing is, no one will disagree with me on this, but essentially, what all we are good at is actually doing war, actually making war, and entertainment. War and entertainment is all we're actually good for as a nation anymore. So we can't make a decent car, we can't make a decent computer, and we can't essentially make any products that are American made. They're all made in China now. So what does that say about us, and what exactly did the presidency of JFK really mean in the context of history? And what does it mean for us today, since essentially we can pretty much assume I can't be sure, but I'm assuming that the government is still covering it up even to this day, and essentially with books, docudramas, and essentially shoddy investigation that doesn't take into account that more than one man may have been involved. And according to my research, more than one person was involved, and unfortunately, that's what the media and what National Geographic and the people who own all of these media organizations will always tell you. They don't want you to actually think for yourself or do the real research, like read books like this by Joseph Ferrero, who actually and this particular book deals with coalescence of interests. Basically, it deals with how they've been able to keep the long-term cover-up going on for about 50 years, and why it will continue for the next 50 if need be, until you guys wake up or actually start thinking for yourselves again, and not being the mindless sheep that actually just watch TV every day and listen to people like Bill O'Reilly and Sean Hannity, and also Anderson Cooper, Ed Schultz, and all the other people that actually spout what they say is the truth, but after a careful examination of the physics of the matter, it just doesn't work. So, where do we go from here? Anyway, I think hopefully I've actually given you some more points to this, and I think I'll be back in a bit with another video that deals with even more that deals with more stuff. Okay. Thanks again. I'll talk to you later.